Commander Vecthar stood in the briefing room of the Coalition warship Eternal Vigilance, his gray, scaled hands clasped behind his back. For 40 years he had served in the Kryn military, 40 years of warfare across 12 different worlds. He had fought against pirates in the Outer Rim, defended colony worlds from raiders, and led assault teams against fortified positions. His chest bore 17 scars, each one a story of survival and victory. Among his people, he was considered a master of warfare. Today, he was being assigned a new unit, a mixed unit. The very idea made him uncomfortable. The Kryn had always fought alongside their own kind. They understood each other, moved as one, thought as one. But the Coalition demanded integration, so integration it would be. The door slid open and 4 figures entered. Vecthar studied them with the careful eye of a veteran soldier. They were small, barely reaching his shoulder. Their bodies looked soft, lacking the thick armor plates that protected Kryn warriors. Their skin was pale and smooth, vulnerable to any blade or claw. These were humans, the newest species to join the Coalition. The first human stepped forward and saluted. "Lieutenant Jake Murphy, sir, reporting for duty." His voice was calm and steady. Behind him stood 3 others, a female with dark hair pulled back in a tight knot, a male with broad shoulders and a crooked nose that suggested it had been broken before, another female, young, with bright eyes that scanned the room constantly. "Sergeant Amy Collins, sir. Corporal Danny Price, sir. Private First Class Lisa Grant, sir." Vecthar returned the salute, though his mind was already calculating. These humans were new to space warfare. Their species had only achieved faster than light travel 80 years ago. 80 years. The Kryn had been exploring the stars for over 3,000 years. What could these newcomers possibly know about real combat? "At ease," Vecthar said. He activated the holographic display in the center of the room. A star map appeared showing the Helios sector. "We have been assigned to defend the colony world of New Terra. Intelligence reports indicate that Ravager forces are moving toward this sector. Our mission is to establish a defensive perimeter, while evacuation transports remove the civilian population." Jake Murphy studied the display. "What's our estimated enemy strength?" 3 to 5 bioships supported by several hundred warrior forms. Vecthar zoomed in on New Terra. "The evacuation will take approximately 72 hours. We must hold the defensive line for that duration." Danny Price shifted his weight. "Have the Ravagers shown any new tactical patterns lately?" Vecthar found the question irritating. Did this human think he had not already considered such things? "The Ravagers are predictable. They attack in waves, attempting to overwhelm defenses through sheer numbers. Standard defensive protocols will be sufficient." Amy Collins spoke next. "What about their bioships? The reports I read suggested they've been adapting their armor plating." "I have fought Ravagers on 6 different occasions," Vecthar said, his voice hard. "I know their capabilities. Your species has never faced them in direct combat. I suggest you trust in my experience." The 4 humans exchanged glances. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication that Vecthar could not read. Jake Murphy's expression remained neutral. "Understood, Commander. What are our assignments?" Vecthar pulled up the tactical deployment. "My primary assault team will hold the forward positions. You will be assigned to rear support, providing covering fire and protecting the evacuation transports." He saw Jake's jaw tighten slightly, but the human said nothing. "This is not a slight against your abilities. It is simply practical. You lack experience with Ravager combat. The rear position is safer and more suitable for your skill level." "With respect, Commander," Jake said carefully, "my team has extensive combat experience. We've operated in hostile environments across multiple theaters. We'd like the opportunity to prove ourselves in a forward position." Vecthar felt his irritation growing. These humans had pride. He would give them that. But pride without wisdom was dangerous. "Lieutenant Murphy, I have reviewed your service records. Impressive for your species, certainly. But you have never faced an enemy like the Ravagers. They are a hive mind, coordinated and relentless. A single mistake can cost lives." I will not risk this mission on untested warriors. Amy Collins crossed her arms. We're not asking for special treatment, Commander. Just a fair assessment. You will have your assessment, Vekthar said firmly. In the rear support position. Dismissed. The humans saluted and left the briefing room. Vekthar watched them go, shaking his head. They would learn soon enough. War was not about courage or enthusiasm. It was about experience, discipline, and the willingness to follow orders without question. Later that evening, Vekthar found himself in the observation deck, reviewing personnel files. He pulled up the human records again, studying them more carefully. Jake Murphy had served in the Terran Defense Force for 12 years. Multiple commendations, several missions marked as classified. Amy Collins was a sharpshooter with an accuracy rating that seemed impossible. Danny Price had survived injuries that would have killed most soldiers. Lisa Grant, the youngest, had more combat drops than some Kryn veterans twice her age. Impressive records for such a young species, a voice said behind him. Vekthar turned to find his second officer, Sekvar, approaching. The younger Kryn warrior gestured to the display. Perhaps you were too harsh with them. They are untested against real threats, Vekthar replied. Better to keep them safe and learn what they can handle. Or perhaps, Sekvar said quietly, they are more capable than they appear. Vekthar closed the files. We will see soon enough. The Ravagers show no mercy to the weak. If the humans cannot handle the pressure, it is better we discover that in a support role rather than on the front line. But as he stood there, looking out at the stars, something nagged at him. The way Jake Murphy had held himself, the calm in Amy Collins's eyes, the casual confidence of Danny Price. These were not the behaviors of inexperienced soldiers. These were the behaviors of warriors who had seen combat before. Real combat. Vekthar pushed the thought away. He had 40 years of experience. He had earned his position through blood and sacrifice. These humans, no matter how impressive their records might seem, were still newcomers to galactic warfare. They would learn their place soon enough. The Ravagers would teach them if nothing else did. He just hoped they survived the lesson. The first wave hit exactly when intelligence predicted. Vekthar watched from the command deck as dozens of red dots appeared on the sensor display, moving toward New Terra's outer defense ring. Ravager bioships, massive creatures grown and shaped for war, pushed through space like sharks through water. All units to battle positions, Vekthar ordered. His voice was steady, confident. He had done this before. Primary assault team, engage the lead elements. Support units maintained defensive formation around the transports. The battle began smoothly. Kryn fighters moved in perfect formation, striking at the Ravager vessels with practiced precision. Energy weapons carved through organic armor. Explosions bloomed in the darkness of space. For 10 minutes, everything went exactly according to plan. Then the formation broke. A massive bioship, larger than the others, burst through the left flank. It had been hiding in the debris field, waiting. Now it moved with terrible speed toward the evacuation transports. Vekthar's primary assault team was on the opposite side of the engagement zone. Response time would be 8 minutes. The transports did not have 8 minutes. All available units intercept that bioship, Vekthar commanded. He watched the tactical display, calculating losses. The transports held 3,000 civilians. If the bioship reached them before defenses could respond, those civilians would die. Commander, this is Lieutenant Murphy. My team can intercept in 90 seconds. Requesting permission to engage. Vekthar hesitated. The humans were in light reconnaissance craft, designed for scouting rather than combat. They would be going against a capital-class bioship with minimal support. He had assigned them to the rear precisely to avoid situations like this. But 3,000 lives hung in the balance. Permission granted. Delay the enemy until support arrives. Do not engage directly. That is an order. Copy that, Commander. We're moving. Vekthar watched 4 small dots on his display break formation and accelerate toward the bioship. He expected them to establish a defensive position, perhaps harass the enemy with long-range fire. Buy time for the real assault team to arrive. What happened next made every officer on the command deck stop and stare. The 4 human craft did not slow down. They did not establish a defensive position. Instead, they accelerated directly at the bioship, moving faster than Vekthar thought possible in combat armor. Before he could order them to pull back, they had already engaged. "What are they doing?" Sekver breathed beside him. Jake Murphy's fighter screamed past the bioship's weapon ports, drawing fire while Amy Collins's craft dove beneath the massive hull. Danny Price and Lisa Grant flanked from opposite sides, their weapons targeting specific points on the bioship's armor. Their movements were not random. They were coordinated, precise, and utterly fearless. "They are attacking," Vekthar said, disbelief in his voice. 4 fighters against a capital ship. "They are attacking." Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Jake Murphy's fighter docked with the bioship's hull. A boarding action. The human was attempting to board a live Ravager vessel. "Murphy, what are you doing?" Vekthar demanded over the comm. "I ordered you to delay, not to board." "With respect, Commander." Jake's voice came back, slightly breathless. "Sometimes the best defense is a really aggressive offense." "We're going inside." 3 more fighters docked. All 4 humans were boarding the ship. Vekthar pulled up the internal sensors, though the bioship's organic interference made readings difficult. He caught glimpses of movement, heat signatures, brief flashes of weapons fire. The humans were fighting their way through the ship's interior. Moving fast, too fast. Vekthar had done boarding actions before. They were slow, careful operations. You cleared each corridor methodically, watching for ambushes. But the humans were not being methodical. They were running through the ship like it was a training exercise. Amy Collins appeared on the tactical feed. She was moving through a corridor filled with Ravager warriors, her weapon firing with mechanical precision. Every shot found its target, weak points in the armor that Vekthar's sensors barely registered. She was not using computer assistance. She was doing it by instinct, by eye, by some terrible natural ability. Danny Price's feed showed him taking a direct hit from a Ravager claw. The blow would have torn through Kryn armor and killed the warrior inside. Danny staggered, went down on one knee, then stood back up and kept fighting. Blood was visible through his damaged suit, but he did not stop. He did not even slow down. Lisa Grant held a corridor junction alone. 20 Ravager warriors came at her from 3 directions. She should have died in seconds. Instead, she lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes of constant combat, her weapon overheating, her armor taking hit after hit. When her ammunition ran out, she used the weapon as a club. When that broke, she used her bare hands. And Jake Murphy was at the heart of the ship, planting explosives on what had to be the bioship's central nervous system. His hands moved quickly, efficiently, even as Ravager warriors closed in around him. His team fought their way to his position, creating a perimeter. Then they ran, all 4 of them sprinting back through the ship as the timer counted down. Vekthar watched their escape, unable to look away. They burst from the boarding hatches with seconds to spare, their fighters disengaging just as the explosives detonated. The bioship convulsed, its massive body tearing apart from within. Secondary explosions rippled through its hull. Then it died, drifting dead in space. The command deck was silent. Every officer stared at the tactical display. 4 fighters, 4 humans. They had destroyed a capital-class bioship in less than 6 minutes. "Medical team to docking bay 3, someone said over the comm. "We have wounded incoming." Vekthar rushed to the medical bay, arriving just as the humans were climbing out of their fighters. Danny Price was covered in blood, his armor torn open in 3 places. Lisa Grant's left arm hung uselessly at her side. Amy Collins had burns across her face and neck. Jake Murphy looked the least injured, but even he moved with the careful precision of someone in pain. The medical officer, a Syrian named Zyth, rushed forward with scanning equipment. He examined Danny first, his eyes widening as he read the results. "These injuries should be fatal. How are you still conscious?" Danny grinned, though it looked more like a grimace. "Because dying seemed like too much paperwork." "Get him into a medical pod now," Zyth ordered. Then he looked at Lisa. "You too. That arm needs immediate attention." "I can wait," Lisa said. "Check the others first." "That is not a request, soldier. Move." As the medical team worked, Vekthar stood in the doorway, watching. Jake Murphy noticed him and walked over, wincing slightly. "Sorry about disobeying orders, Commander. We saw an opportunity and took it." "You could have been killed," Vekthar said. "All of you could have died. But we didn't," Jake replied simply. "And 3,000 civilians are still alive. That's what matters." Vekthar studied the human. There was no bravado in his voice, no pride, Just a simple statement of fact. I reviewed the combat footage. Your movements inside that ship. The speed, the accuracy. I have never seen anything like it. We do what we need to do, Jake said. That's all. Your wounds. Vecthar gestured to Danny, who was being placed in a medical pod. He should be dead. The medical officer said those injuries were fatal. Jake glanced at his teammate. Danny's tough. We all are. It's just how humans are built. No species is built to survive injuries like that, Vecthar insisted. What you did today, it should not have been possible. Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he looked at Vecthar with eyes that suddenly seemed much older than his face suggested. Commander, you asked what armor we were wearing. That was our light reconnaissance gear. Our actual combat armor is 3 times heavier. We weren't equipped for heavy fighting today. This was supposed to be a support mission, remember? Vecthar felt something cold settle in his stomach. That was your light armor? Yes, sir. Then what you did today, you did without proper equipment? We worked with what we had, Jake said. That's also just how humans are built. The human lieutenant walked away to check on his team, leaving Vecthar standing alone. The Kryn commander looked at the 4 humans, being treated for injuries that should have killed them, having just destroyed an enemy ship that should have been impossible for them to defeat. And for the first time in 40 years, Vecthar wondered if he really understood warfare at all. 3 days passed. The battle for New Terra continued in waves, each attack more fierce than the last. The evacuation was 60% complete. 2,000 more civilians waited for transport. The Ravagers were gathering their forces for a final push. Vecthar stood in the intelligence center, studying the latest reports. A Ravager command node had been detected on the planet's surface, hidden in the ruins of an abandoned mining facility. Intelligence officers had confirmed it was coordinating all Ravager forces in the sector. Without it, the enemy would lose cohesion. With it, they would launch an overwhelming assault that no defensive line could stop. We need to destroy it, Sekvar said, reading the same reports. If that command node remains active, we will lose this planet. It is 200 kilometers behind enemy lines, Vecthar replied, surrounded by atmospheric interference that prevents orbital strikes. Any large force we send would be detected and destroyed before reaching the target. Then we send a small force. A strike team. Vecthar studied the tactical map. A strike team would have to drop through a hostile atmosphere filled with Ravager biofighters. They would have to cross 200 kilometers of enemy territory without support. They would have to assault a fortified position, destroy the command node, and escape. The survival chances were less than 20%. Coalition Command had already suggested abandoning the remaining colonists and retreating. The logical choice. The safe choice. The choice that would preserve military assets and avoid unnecessary casualties. Vecthar looked at the map again. 2,000 civilians, families, children, people who had trusted the coalition to protect them. I will lead the strike team, he said quietly. Sekvar stared at him. Commander, you know what you are asking. This is a suicide mission. Then I will die doing my duty. Vecthar pulled up the personnel roster. I need volunteers. Experienced warriors who understand the risks. Before he could send the request, his comm unit activated. Jake Murphy's voice came through. Commander, we heard about the command node. My team is volunteering for the strike mission. How did you... Vecthar stopped. Of course, the humans had been monitoring intelligence channels. Lieutenant Murphy, I have not even sent out the call for volunteers yet. You were going to, though. We're ready, all 4 of us. Danny Price is still recovering from his injuries. Danny says he's fine. And before you argue, Commander, we've already checked the mission parameters. Small team, hostile insertion, target destruction. That's exactly the kind of operation we train for. You need us. Vecthar wanted to refuse, wanted to keep these strange, reckless humans safe. But Jake was right. They did need experienced soldiers. And despite everything, despite his initial doubts, Vecthar now trusted these humans more than he trusted most of his own warriors. Report to docking bay 5 in 1 hour, full combat load. And Murphy, tell Danny that if he slows us down, I will leave him behind. Understood, Commander. See you in an hour. The strike team assembled. Vecthar, Jake, Amy, Danny, Lisa, and 2 other Kryn warriors named Sekvar and Thelkor. 7 soldiers against an entire enemy stronghold. The odds were terrible. Everyone knew it. No one spoke about it. They loaded into drop pods designed for rapid atmospheric entry. Vecthar checked his equipment one final time. Weapons, ammunition, explosives, medical supplies. Everything he would need to complete the mission or die trying. 30 seconds to launch, the pilot announced. Danny leaned over to Lisa and grinned. Remember that time we dropped into that contested zone on Kepler 7? This is going to be way worse. Great, Lisa replied, but she was smiling too. Something to look forward to. Vecthar stared at them. They were joking. About to drop into hell itself, and they were joking. Was this bravery or madness? He still could not tell. The pods launched. Vecthar felt the crushing acceleration as they fell toward the planet. Alarms screamed warnings. Enemy fighters detected their approach. Energy weapons flashed past his pod. One pod exploded, taking its occupant with it. Another took a direct hit and went spiraling out of control. Vecthar's pod was hit. Warning lights blazed across his display. Hull breach. Navigation systems failing. He was going to crash. The impact would kill him. Then everything went black. He woke to someone shaking his shoulder. His head pounded. Blood ran down his face from a cut above his eye. Amy Collins knelt beside him, her helmet off, checking his injuries. "Commander, can you hear me? We need to move. Ravagers are closing on our position." "How?" Vecthar looked around. He was outside his pod, lying on rocky ground. The pod itself was a smoking ruin 20 meters away. "How did I get out?" "Danny pulled you out," Amy said. "You were unconscious. We couldn't leave you." Vecthar tried to stand and almost fell. Amy caught him, steadying him. Through the pain and confusion, he saw Danny nearby, providing cover fire. The human's earlier injuries had reopened. Blood stained his armor, leaving a visible trail behind him. But he kept fighting, his weapon barking in short, controlled bursts. "Danny is injured," Vecthar said. "He should not be fighting." "Try telling him that," Amy replied. "We've been trying for 3 years. He doesn't listen." They moved as a team through the rocky terrain. Vecthar's tactical plan had assumed they would land within 2 kilometers of the target. Instead, they were 15 kilometers away, scattered and under heavy enemy fire. His careful strategy was worthless. Jake appeared beside him, weapon ready. "Commander, we need to adapt. The Ravagers know we're here. They're sending everything they have. We can't stick to the original plan. What do you suggest?" "We push forward. Fast and hard. Don't give them time to organize. Keep them reacting instead of planning." It went against everything Vecthar had been taught. Military doctrine said to establish position, assess threats, advance carefully. But they did not have time for military doctrine. They had minutes, maybe less. "Do it," Vecthar ordered. "Lead the way." The humans moved like nothing Vecthar had ever seen. They did not advance cautiously. They ran, weapons firing, taking down targets before the enemy could respond. When Ravager warriors appeared, the humans engaged without hesitation. No fear, no doubt, just action. Vecthar found himself fighting to keep up. His body was younger than many Kryn warriors, conditioned by decades of training. But the humans moved faster, fought harder, pushed forward when any sane soldier would have taken cover. They encountered a Ravager's strong point, a defensive position that would normally require careful planning to overcome. Lisa simply charged it, drawing fire while Jake and Amy flanked from both sides. Danny provided suppressing fire with wounds that should have put him in a medical pod hours ago. The strong point fell in 90 seconds. During a brief moment of cover, Sekvar pulled Vecthar aside. The young Kryn warrior was breathing hard, his combat stimulant glands exhausted. "Commander, I cannot maintain this pace. My body needs time to recover." Vecthar looked at Jake, who was checking his ammunition count. "How do you maintain combat effectiveness for so long? What stimulants do your people use?" Jake looked confused. "Stimulants? We don't use combat stimulants, Commander. This is just us. That is impossible. No species can sustain this level of activity without biological enhancement." "Commander," Jake said quietly, "humans don't have combat glands. We don't have natural armor. We don't have enhanced strength or speed. What we have is the ability to keep moving when everything in our bodies is telling us to stop. That's not biology. That's just will." Vecthar stared at him. These humans were not suppressing pain or fear with chemicals. They were not using biological advantages to push through exhaustion. They were simply refusing to quit. The injuries, the exhaustion, the fear, all of it was there. They just kept fighting anyway. The realization shook him to his core. They reached the command node facility as darkness fell. The structure was heavily defended. Ravager warriors patrolled the perimeter in organized patterns. Weapon emplacements covered every approach. This was a fortress designed to withstand assault. Jake studied it for maybe 30 seconds, then started giving orders. Not suggestions, orders. And Vecthar found himself following them without question. The assault was chaos. Amy's rifle spoke with deadly accuracy, taking down sentries before they could raise alarms. Danny and Lisa breached the main entrance with explosives. Jake led the way inside, clearing rooms with brutal efficiency. Vecthar and his Kryn warriors followed, learning this new aggressive style of warfare. Inside the facility, they found the command node, a massive organic structure pulsing with bioluminescent light. Jake placed explosives while the others held the entrance. Ravager warriors poured in wave after wave. The team fought them back, spending ammunition, taking hits, bleeding but never breaking. The timer on the explosives counted down. 10 seconds, 5. The team ran for the exit. The world exploded behind them. The facility collapsed, the command node destroyed. The mission was complete. But Ravager forces surrounded the extraction point. Hundreds of them drawn by the explosion. The shuttle could not land under such heavy fire. Jake spoke calmly into his comm. "Tell the shuttle to take off. I'll hold them here. The rest of you get clear and call for extraction at the secondary point." "No," Vecthar said. Jake turned to look at him. "Commander, that's an order. You need to—" The medical bay was quiet except for the soft hum of equipment. Vecthar sat beside Danny Price's medical pod, watching the humans sleep. The readouts showed improvement, but the injuries were severe. Danny had lost 40% of his blood volume during the mission. For a Kryn warrior, such blood loss meant death. Yet the medical officer insisted Danny would make a full recovery. Dr. Zeeth approached, datapad in hand. The Syrian physician had been treating the human team since their arrival. "Commander, I thought you would want to see these results. I have been studying human physiology since the first battle. The data is remarkable." "Tell me," Vecthar said. Geith pulled up a holographic display showing a human body, rotating slowly in the air. Humans evolved on what we classify as a deathworld. Earth has gravity measuring 1.2 standard units. That is heavy by most galactic standards. The planet experienced extreme environmental pressures, regular natural disasters, predators that would terrify most sapient species, diseases that killed in horrific ways. This shaped their evolution? Everything about them, Zeith confirmed. He zoomed in on the human circulatory system. "Look at their blood. It clots faster than any species I have ever studied. They can lose massive amounts and survive. Their bodies compensate, redistribute resources, keep vital systems functioning even under extreme duress." The display shifted to the nervous system. "Their neural pathways are redundant. Damage that would paralyze a Kryn can be routed around. I have seen Private Grant continue fighting with nerve damage that should have left her unable to move." "What about pain?" Vecthar asked. "They show injuries that should be crippling, yet they continue to fight." "Ah, that is the most interesting part." Zeith pulled up brain scans. "Humans have a stress response system unlike anything else. They produce a hormone called adrenaline naturally. It is not a combat gland, Commander. It is an emergency response their bodies generate automatically. It increases strength, speed, dulls pain, enhances focus. Every human can do this without training or enhancement. Every human. Every single one. It is part of their basic biology. But more than that, they can override their pain responses through will alone. The pain is there, Commander. They feel it just as we do. They simply choose to ignore it." Vecthar studied the sleeping human. "How is such a thing possible?" "Because for millions of years the humans who could not do this died. Natural selection at its most brutal. Earth did not breed weakness out of humans, Commander. It bred surrender out of them." The medical pod beeped. Danny's eyes opened. He saw Vecthar and smiled weakly. "Hey, Commander, we win." "Yes, Private Price, we won. Thanks to your sacrifice." "Just doing my job." Danny tried to sit up and winced. "Okay, maybe I should rest a bit longer." "You saved my life," Vecthar said quietly. "You were already injured. You should have left me in that pod. Leave behind a teammate? Not happening, sir. Not how we operate. Later that day, Vecthar found Jake Murphy in the observation deck, staring out at New Terra. The evacuation transports were still moving in steady streams carrying civilians to safety. May I join you? Vecthar asked. Of course, Commander. They stood in silence for a moment. Then Vecthar spoke. I have been reviewing human military history. The database makes for difficult reading. Yeah, Jake said softly. It's not pretty. The Battle of Thermopylae. 300 warriors against an army of thousands. They knew they would die, yet they stood anyway. Sometimes the mission matters more than survival. Stalingrad. 2 million casualties. Your people fought over a single city for months. The casualties. Vecthar trailed off. We learned a long time ago that some things are worth dying for. Territory, freedom, survival of our species. We learned that lesson over and over, in blood, across thousands of years. Vecthar pulled up a data file. Your species has been at war continuously for over 10,000 years. Wars against other humans. Your own people. How did you survive? By learning. Every war taught us something. Every defeat showed us what not to do. Every victory showed us what worked. We built our entire civilization on those lessons. Jake turned to face him. You asked me once how we fight the way we do. That's how. Every human soldier carries 10,000 years of warfare in their training. Every tactic we use was paid for in blood by soldiers who came before us. You calculate death into every plan, Vecthar said. Acceptable losses, strategic sacrifice. These are terms I found in your military doctrine. Yes. It horrifies me. The casual acceptance of death. Jake was quiet for a long moment. We don't celebrate it, Commander. We hate it. Every name on every memorial wall is a reminder of the cost. But we learned that sometimes the only way to save lives is to be willing to sacrifice them. Sometimes the only way to win is to pay a terrible price. We don't like it. We just accept it as reality. Amy Collins entered the observation deck, nodded to both of them, and stood nearby. She had bandages on her face where burns were still healing, but she moved with easy confidence. I wanted to ask you something, Vecthar said to her. During the battle, I saw you calculate firing solutions faster than computer assistants. How is that possible? Practice, Amy replied simply. Thousands of hours on the range, thousands of hours in combat simulations. Eventually, you stop thinking and just do. The gun becomes part of you. You see the target and your body reacts. But you felt fear. During the drop, during the assault. I saw it in your eyes. Of course I felt fear. Fear keeps you alive. It makes you careful. The trick is not to let it stop you from doing what needs to be done. Vecthar shook his head. This is what I do not understand. How do you push through fear? How do you keep fighting when everything in your body is telling you to run? Amy considered the question. You know what the definition of bravery is, Commander? It's not the absence of fear. It's being afraid and doing it anyway. Every human knows fear. We've all felt it. The difference is we decided a long time ago that being afraid doesn't mean you stop moving forward. She pulled up a data file on her personal device. Images appeared. Old Earth poetry, written in trenches during ancient wars. Letters from soldiers to their families. Memorial walls with thousands upon thousands of names carved in stone. This is what humans do, Amy said softly. We remember. Every soldier who died. Every civilian who was lost. We carry them with us. And we keep fighting so their sacrifice means something. The comm system activated. All senior officers to the command deck. Urgent. They rushed to the bridge. The tactical display showed a nightmare. The Ravager fleet had gathered its full strength for a final assault. 300 ships moving in coordinated formation toward New Terra. The evacuation was 95% complete. 5,000 civilians remained. Coalition Fleet Admiral Torvek appeared on the main screen. All coalition forces are ordered to retreat immediately. We cannot hold against this attack. Evacuate your ships and fall back to the secondary defense line. Vecthar stared at the display. 5,000 people, families, children. They would be left behind. Abandoned to the Ravagers. Commander, Sekvar said quietly. What are our orders? Vecthar looked at Jake. The human met his eyes and nodded slightly. Some unspoken understanding passed between them. Communications, Vecthar ordered. Report a systems malfunction. Tell Fleet Command we cannot receive their transmission clearly. The communications officer stared at him. Sir, That would be falsifying a report, disobeying direct orders. Do it. That is a direct order. The officer hesitated, then complied. Vecthar turned to Jake. How much time can we buy them? An hour, maybe more if we're lucky. But Commander, you understand what you're doing. This is insubordination, court-martial, dishonorable discharge. I understand perfectly, Lieutenant. The question is, will you follow me? Jake smiled. Commander, we've been waiting for you to ask. What's the plan? We make them pay for every inch. We hit them hard, hit them fast, and we do not stop until the last civilian is off that planet. Are you with me? Every human responded immediately. Yes, sir. Sekvar and Thelkor looked at each other, then stepped forward. We stand with you, Commander. Other Kryn warriors began to move. One by one, they committed to the fight. Not all of them. Some followed orders and evacuated. But enough stayed. Enough believed in what they were doing. 37 ships total, against a fleet of 300. The odds were impossible. Everyone knew it. No one spoke about it. Vecthar looked at his assembled force, humans and Kryn, standing together, ready to die for people they had never met, ready to sacrifice everything for a cause they believed in. All ships, Vecthar commanded, engage the enemy. Show them what warriors can do. Jake stood beside him, checking his weapons one final time. It's been an honor, Commander. No, Lieutenant, Vecthar replied. The honor is mine. Now teach me how humans fight. The fleet moved forward, toward impossible odds, toward almost certain death. But they moved without hesitation. Because some things were worth dying for. And they had learned that lesson from the best teachers in the galaxy. They had learned it from humans. The orbital space around New Terra filled with weapons fire, 37 defenders against 300 Ravager ships. The math was simple and brutal. They could not win. They could only delay. Make the enemy pay in time and blood for every meter of space. Vecthar had stopped thinking like a Kryn commander. Those tactics were designed for conventional warfare, for battles that could be won. This was not that kind of battle. Instead, he turned to Jake Murphy and asked a question he never thought he would ask. How would humans approach this? Jake's smile was grim. We'd make them regret every second of it. The human way of fighting was chaos to anyone watching from outside. There was no formation, no defensive line, no careful advancement. Instead, the mixed human and Kryn force moved like a swarm of angry insects. They hit the Ravager flanks, fired, and disappeared before return fire could find them. They used debris fields as cover, darting between destroyed ships and asteroids. They targeted weak points, going after engines and weapon systems rather than trying to destroy the massive bioships outright. Every attack cost the Ravagers time. Every minute cost them ships. And most importantly, every minute bought the evacuation transports more time to save lives. Lisa Grant's fighters screamed past a Ravager carrier, her weapons tearing into its sensor arrays. She had taken 3 direct hits already. Her ship was barely holding together. Warning alarms screamed in her cockpit. She ignored them. Lisa, you need to pull back, Amy's voice came through the comm. Your ship is dying. Then I better make it count, Lisa replied. She armed her self-destruct sequence and locked her course toward the carrier's main engine. Tell my folks I love them. Tell them I died doing something that mattered. Lisa, no. Tell them, Lisa repeated. Then her fighter slammed into the carrier at full speed. The explosion was massive. The carrier's engine detonated, starting a chain reaction. The entire ship broke apart, taking 3 smaller bioships with it. On the command deck of the Eternal Vigilance, the crew stood in shocked silence. Vekthar's hands gripped the console. He had seen warriors die before, many times, but this was different. Lisa Grant had been under his command for less than a week. He had known her name, her face, her voice. Now she was gone, erased in an instant. "Commander," Danny Price's voice came through, rough with emotion. "Lisa bought us 5 minutes. Let's not waste them." The battle continued. Danny's fighter, damaged and leaking fuel, kept fighting. His movements were slower now, his earlier injuries taking their toll, but he did not retreat, did not hesitate. He had lost a teammate, a friend, and his response was to fight harder. Amy Collins became a ghost on the battlefield. Her damaged fighter moved through the chaos with impossible precision. Every shot she fired found a target. Weak points, critical systems, command centers. She was not just fighting anymore. She was hunting, taking revenge for Lisa with cold, mechanical efficiency. Sekvar and Thelkor learned quickly. The human style of warfare was madness by Kryn standards, but it worked. They abandoned their training and followed the humans' example. Aggressive, unpredictable, relentless. They stopped fighting to survive and started fighting to hurt the enemy as much as possible before dying. 42 minutes into the battle, coalition reinforcements arrived. Fleet Admiral Torvek's flagship appeared, with the full defense fleet behind it. But instead of relief, Vekthar felt only dread. He had disobeyed direct orders. There would be consequences. The tide of battle turned. With reinforcements, the Ravager fleet was pushed back. Enemy ships began to retreat, their assault broken. The evacuation transports completed their final runs. Every civilian was off the planet. They had won, but the cost was visible. Of the 37 defenders, 29 survived. 8 had given their lives. Among them was Lisa Grant, who had been 23 years old and had spent her last moments buying time for strangers to escape. Admiral Torvek's face appeared on the main screen. His expression was cold, angry. "Commander Vekthar, you will report to my flagship immediately for disciplinary action. Lieutenant Murphy, you will accompany him. The rest of your forces are to stand down and await further orders." Before Vekthar could respond, Jake interrupted. "Admiral, Commander Vekthar just saved 5,000 lives. If you're going to court-martial someone, start with me. I was the one who suggested we stay and fight." "Get in line," Amy added, her voice hard. "We all disobeyed orders. We all chose to stay." One by one, every human who had participated in the battle spoke up, claiming responsibility, defending Vekthar. Standing together as one unit, Admiral Torvek's expression did not change. "All personnel involved will report for tribunal. This conversation is over." The tribunal convened 3 days later. Vekthar and Jake stood before a panel of senior coalition officers. The charges were serious: disobeying direct orders, falsifying communications reports, unauthorized combat operations. Any one of these could result in dishonorable discharge. The prosecution presented their case efficiently. The evidence was clear. Vekthar had deliberately ignored retreat orders. He had put coalition ships at risk. He had violated military protocol. There was no defense against the facts. Then Admiral Torvek did something unexpected. He stood up and spoke directly to the tribunal. "Before you pass judgment, I request permission to present additional evidence." The tribunal granted permission. Torvek activated the main display. Combat footage began to play. 47 minutes of battle. The tribunal watched in silence as 37 ships held off 300. They saw Lisa Grant's final sacrifice, saw Danny Price fighting through injuries that should have killed him, saw Amy Collins' impossible accuracy, saw Human and Kryn working together, learning from each other, dying for each other. When the footage ended, Torvek spoke again. "I delayed this tribunal specifically so I could review every second of that battle. I wanted to understand what Commander Vekthar did and why he did it. What I found changed my perspective entirely." He walked to stand beside Vekthar. "This commander disobeyed orders. That is a fact. But he did so for the right reasons. He saw 5,000 lives at stake and refused to abandon them. More than that, he learned something that I think the Coalition needs to understand. He learned how to fight alongside humans." Torvek pulled up images of previous Coalition battles. "We have been treating human forces as support units, secondary roles. We assumed their inexperience with galactic warfare made them less valuable. But Commander Vekthar discovered something different. Humans do not fight like we do. They do not calculate odds and retreat when those odds are unfavorable. They fight with determination that defies logic. They sacrifice themselves for others without hesitation, and in doing so, they inspire those around them to be better warriors. The Admiral looked at Jake Murphy. Lieutenant, your service record shows 63 combat operations. You have never retreated from a fight. You have never abandoned a teammate. You have lost soldiers under your command, yet you continue to lead with the same courage. How? Jake stood at attention. Sir, it's what we do. It's who we are. We learned a long time ago that some things matter more than survival. Honor matters, duty matters. The lives of innocents matter. We can't control whether we live or die in battle. We can only control whether we do the right thing. Torvek turned back to the tribunal. The charges against Commander Vekthar and his team are accurate. They did disobey orders. But if following orders means abandoning 5,000 civilians to certain death, then perhaps our orders were wrong. The tribunal deliberated for 2 hours. When they returned, the head officer spoke clearly. We find that while protocols were violated, the actions taken were justified under extreme circumstances. All charges are dismissed. Furthermore, Commander Vekthar and Lieutenant Murphy are to be awarded the Coalition Star of Valor for exceptional courage under fire. Vekthar refused to accept his medal unless Jake's entire team received equal honors. The tribunal agreed. The ceremony was held on the Eternal Vigilance broadcast throughout the coalition. Medals were presented. Speeches were given. But the moment that mattered most came afterward. Vekthar stood before Jake, Amy, and Danny. He held Lisa Grant's medal in his hands. This should go to her family. She earned it. She did, Amy agreed quietly. She died so others could live. That's the greatest honor any soldier can achieve. I am sorry I did not see her worth sooner, Vekthar said. I am sorry I did not see any of your worth when we first met. I was blinded by prejudice and pride. You learned, Jake replied. That's what matters. You changed your mind when it counted. I request permanent transfer to human units, Vekthar announced. If you will have me. The 3 humans looked at each other. Then Jake extended his hand. Welcome to the team, Commander. Months later, Vekthar sat in his quarters writing a report for the Coalition Military Academy. They had requested his insights on human combat doctrine. His analysis of what made human warriors different. He stared at the empty page for a long time before he began to write. Humans are not the strongest species in the galaxy. They are not the fastest. They are not the most technologically advanced. Their bodies are fragile compared to many warrior races. They lack natural armor, enhanced strength, or built-in weapons. By every measurable standard, they should be weak.